This video is presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile.
Hello, baseball fans. You're watching On Deck with Tyler Redmond.
Welcome into Braves On Deck. We are joined with former Atlanta Braves manager, former San Francisco Giants manager, Milwaukee Brewers manager, and of course the Cincinnati Reds manager, Dave Bristol. Dave, always good to see you. Good to see you here today.
Well, I thank you for making that long trip from Columbus, Georgia, all the way to Andrews. Few people would do that.
Well, we don't get a chance often to interview someone with as much experience in the game as you have, and I always love to hear from you. You know, there's very few people. I'll say this right now. There's very few people who enjoy doing interviews with me as much as you do, and it's always a pleasure to be here. And thank you for letting us come into your home to do it. I really appreciate it.
Well, you are always welcome here. We'll feed and water you.
Dave, with all your experience, you've seen a whirlwind of change in baseball over the years. You know, different things happening, different rule changes, just the way the game evolves. With all the changes over the years, what keeps you watching the game and what keeps you invested in the game?
Well, I've always loved it, and despite all the changes, which some I don't like, but there's nothing I can do about it. So if you love the game, you're going to watch it. And there's some clubs that I watch more. I'm a big Reds fan, and I'm a big Red Sox fan. And I think Alex Cora does a heck of a job. He's got more patience than Job with pitchers. I've worn a pair of flip-flops out throwing them at the, as Chipper Jones said the other day, throwing them at the TV. But that's the way it is, and if you got a TV, you're going to turn it on and watch it. And I love baseball.
I know you do, and I always love to hear the old stories. And you know, the thing that whenever your name comes up, the team that really comes to mind with your career is the Cincinnati Reds. You know, you had a lot of great tenures, but that group of guys that you had at a young age, especially, you had a young Pete Rose, young Johnny Bench, young Tony Pérez. That caliber of player, what did you see out of those guys early on that, you know, did you think like these are going to be three of the all-time greats?
Well, I'm not that smart, but hey, I signed with the Reds in 1951 when I was 18 years old, and they found out right quick that I wasn't going to make the big leagues. They made a player manager out of me. So when they entrust young players with you, they want you to work with them all you can, morning, noon, and night. And that's what I tried to do all the time with all the young players. And all the scouts would always say, send them to Bristol. They know he'll get the most out of them and work with them and care for them. And I certainly tried to do that in all the years from Class D all the way to AAA to the big leagues. But I'm not smart enough to sit here and tell you that I saw Bench do what he did in the big leagues.
We got Johnny Bench catching for you.
Right. Looks like he's going to be a pretty good player. And, you know, Pérez, Hams, Pete Rose, those are all young players. We don't actually have an old club, and we just try to get good players and see if they can't produce.
But you could tell, Tony Pérez, if the game lasted long enough, he'd find a way to win it, even in the minor leagues and everything. In 1963, he didn't get out of Cuba till May, and we'd go to the ballpark every morning in Macon, Georgia, and work out. And he got better each day, and didn't take him too long to get to the big leagues. Tommy Helm the same way. I managed in Palatka, Florida, and I told the farm director, I've never asked for a player because they'd always tell you if you ask for him and he hits 200, he's yours for the year. But I knew that I was playing second base and I could help Tommy Helms. He was a shortstop. And 9 out of the first 10 years he played for me. And it was so sad when he and Rose died within the same year. And they played together at Macon and were roomed together in the big leagues and good friends. I hate to see good people like that leave us, but I loved them, and they played their tails off for me all those years.
I'm sure they did. You know, Charlie Hustle doesn't get that nickname for no reason. Early on, you know, I've done a lot of research on you in the past couple of weeks. I read a lot of quotes about you, and don't worry, none of them were bad. But Pete Rose, you know, said that, you know, you built the Big Red Machine. Sparky Anderson developed it. Tony Pérez told that story that you mentioned about in Macon, Georgia, coming from Cuba. He was out of shape. He credits you as being one of the biggest reasons that he's a Hall of Famer. And I should add, Johnny Bench, you know, spoke about you giving him confidence at a young age. To get compliments like that from those three guys specifically, and to see how their careers turned out, what does that mean to you?
I first managed bench in the Florida Instructional League in 1965. We had a club there, and we had players from different organizations, Houston, Angels, but Bench and Gary Nolan were two of the guys on that club. Jim Spencer was a big first baseman with the Angels who got to the big leagues. Good player, too. And we worked like mad, and they became good that year. And then Bench, I think, went to Peninsula in the Carolina League and then to Buffalo. And then he came up in '68, and we didn't let him get too many at-bats where he'd still be eligible for the Rookie of the Year, and he won it the next year. Helms won a Rookie of the Year one. Rose did too. It was fun. Another guy that was on that club that really blossomed was Lee May, a first baseman. Mm-hmm. And I got on him about trying to pull too much. He said, "Hey, Double O, you brought me the big leagues to hit that net in left field." It was across the field, and left field had a big net out there. And I was trying to get him to hit it more up the middle and over that center field wall. It was only 387. He turned out to be a heck of a good player, too. And he and Tony Pérez were great friends, ran around together. I was fortunate to manage some of the best players in the big leagues, not only at Cincinnati, but at the Giants with Willie McCovey, the Braves with Phil Negro or Dale Murphy. I've been very fortunate to be to come from, well, you were here in Andrews, to be able to go manage 4 big league clubs, and I'm proud of that.
It's a great day for a new Chevrolet from Glenn Smith in Opelika. Silverado and Colorado trucks ready to roll. Get going in a powerful new full-size Chevrolet Silverado with discounts up to $13,500 off. Drive away in the mid-size Chevy Colorado ready for work or play. Discounted up to $4,000 off. People from all over the USA are going to Glenn Smith Chevrolet. Get ready to drive and get ready to smile.
You're a Cincinnati Reds Hall of Famer, and I'm holding this award right here. You got this in 2018. To get that award and to be amidst, one of the greatest organizations in baseball, one of the oldest organizations in baseball, to be in that Hall of Fame with the guys that are in there with you, what did that honor mean to you?
A lot. Yeah, it was a great day, and I was fortunate to have both my kids who are living there. I heard Sister say yesterday, told somebody, that's the best time she's ever had being up there, seeing all those good players and visiting. It was a 3-day thing, and we had a great time. And I remember when Tommy Helms introduced me, and I think he said something about, here's the guy that put the key in the Big Red Machine and turned it. which was pretty good. I liked that. And then when I was coming off the platform, Bench helped me down and gave me a big hug. My ribs are still hurting from that. I loved him for that.
Well, you mentioned how lucky you are to be able to be a part of, those 4 clubs, but you were also one of the youngest managers of all time back when you were first hired at 33 years old. To take on a job like that at that young of an age, the players are close to you in age. Did that help you identify with them? What were the challenges there? What was that like being that young, being a manager?
Well, some of them, Don Norbart and Joe Nuxall, were probably older than I was. But you take what you're given and try to help them. And the next year, Nuxall, they decided to release him, and I had to tell him in spring training. And he said, "Oh, no, I can still pitch." I said, "Hey, Joe, they're going to make you the second guy on the radio team. You got to take that." And he did, and wound up staying 40 years. Now he's an icon with a statue outside the ballpark in Cincinnati, Joe Nuxall Way. That's pretty good. I'm proud of that.
Yeah, absolutely. You seem to always kind of look out for your guys, and that's been said multiple times from a lot of different players, the great ones, and even some of those that maybe weren't so notable in baseball, but I'm sure were notable people. They've always spoken highly of you. And when you look at your career, what are you most proud of? Right, 4 teams, Hall of Fame inductions. What are you most proud of?
That I got to manage 4 big league clubs. There's not a lot of people. Some have 5, but I just wish I could have done better everywhere I was. We weren't too far from getting a pennant in '69 to Cincinnati. But the other clubs, I was really disappointed that I didn't do a better job with the Braves. Because Eddie Robinson was the general manager, and every club I've ever managed, the guy that's hired me got fired. So you were out there on a limb by yourself, so to speak. But that's the way baseball goes. Like in Milwaukee, we went to spring training as a pilots, and every weekend Bud Selig was there trying to buy the club from Dewey Soriano. And finally, the last Sunday of spring training, they told the equipment guy who puts all the gear and stuff on a semi, said, "Drive toward Salt Lake City. If you hear the club's been sold, turn right to Milwaukee. If you don't, keep going straight to Seattle." So that was on a Sunday when we broke spring training, and we went to Milwaukee, played the next day, and they had to get some seamstress to put a little M on the uniforms we wore opening day there.
Wow.
I'll never forget that.
You bring up Milwaukee. That was an expansion team at the time. Major League Baseball, we recently heard Commissioner Manfred brought up the idea that not only will Major League Baseball reconfigure the way, geographically, possibly, but it's also looking at expansion. With your experience, I'd love your opinion on, whether or not Major League Baseball should expand. Do you think that's a good thing? But also, what are the challenges with managing an expansion team?
You're just taking players that nobody else wanted, and they had to take them to. It was a far cry from going to the Big Red Machine to managing that Milwaukee Expansion Club in 1970. I'll tell you that.
I bet.
That'll keep you awake at night. But expansion might come with different places. You hate to see empty seats at some of the ballparks now, but there's no telling what'll happen. The way baseball is changing each year. I hate to see it, but I'm so happy that Milwaukee's doing well this year.
Yeah,
They got a good club and a good manager and good players.
absolutely. When when you look at the game today, there's a lot of talk about competitive balance. Payrolls are different in LA versus Milwaukee, for example. Do you think Major League Baseball should focus on competitive balance, or do you think it should be left alone?
Well, there's a lot of money being put into baseball today. Uh, I'm not smart enough to tell you what should be done. They keep talking about Nashville, Tennessee, but are they playing in that small ballpark in Sacramento?
Mm-hmm.
Now they're coming to the ballpark in Las Vegas. It's 110 degrees every day, and there's no roof on it. That's going to be tough, and it's a small ballpark. That's a bandbox, they tell me. I wouldn't want to be managing there. Golly.
Hey y'all, would you like to buy some cars like these? We're coming down to Columbus Sports Cars on Veteran Parkway in Columbus, Georgia. We buy, sell, and trade. We're open Monday through Friday, 10 to 7, and Saturday, 10 to 3. Hope to see you there.
Let's talk about your time with the Atlanta Braves. You mentioned earlier some of the players that you managed there. I want to start first with Phil Niekro. We both knew him. You've managed him. If you could just speak to who he was and what kind of leader was he for you on that team?
Well, he'd take the ball, relief or starting pitcher. I played in his golf tournament 20 years, and he always said, I won 20, but I also lost 20 for him. That's the way he introduced me. But what a prince of a guy. And, I let him blow a 8-2 lead one night, and I said to myself then, no way. You think, well, he'll walk the bases loaded and strike out 3, but I didn't have that patience to let him walk the bases loaded without some relief pitcher coming in. And we had a lot of young guys. Roland Office played center field. Jerry Rorser they got from the Dodgers in that big deal when Dusty Baker was sent to the Dodgers. But see, all that, and they were traded before Eddie Robinson had done that before I got there. I mean, before spring training. And when you were the club like that, they take what they're given, work your tail off, and hope they will too, to make them a better club. And 2 years I was there, 2.5 years I was there, we started the season off with an 8-3 record, both years, right? And then turn around and lose 16 in a row or 17 in a row. That'll break your heart. That's when Turner sent me home. And I told him, I said, that you can't do that. The commissioner won't let you. Well, the next day he did. And he called and said, I'll see you at the ballpark the next day, like nothing had happened. But
I was going to ask you about Ted Turner and just working for him and, what that was like.
Well, we were walking down the street in New York, and he started sniffing. He said, marijuana. I said, I hope we don't get that on our club. He said, oh, that won't hurt him. And I said to myself there, I won't be here long. And I wasn't. But I getting back to, in Cincinnati, but the club was sold. New general manager came in. Milwaukee, the same thing. Same thing in Atlanta, Eddie Robinson, and the same thing in San Francisco. New ownership. And, they want their own people, but hey, that's all right. Hey, they got the best I had every day from me. I gave it all I had. And I don't look back on anything. make no excuses. I love to go into the ballpark every day and still do. I go to Young Harris College over here in Georgia and watch them. Ever since I got out of the big leagues in '93, I've been going over there. Seen some good players. Charlie Blackman came to Young Harris when he was junior college and then signed with the Rockies. There were 3 or 4 guys on the Hall of Fame that were there.
You mentioned Young Harris. You can see it in the camera shot. There's a purple frame back here. You're in the Young Harris Athletics Hall of Fame. That just goes to show what they think of you and how much impact you've had on their program. And I just want to make sure people know, like, you have been very involved there, and I know you've had a big impact.
Well, thank you. They've been awful good to me. I've met a lot of good people there, and still there. I still stay in touch with a lot of the players. You know, if I see it on my iPad or they're having a birthday, I try to send them a happy birthday or so. And I feel like I've been an asset and not gotten in the way. And one day I walked up there, and this big pitcher was throwing, and I said something to him. He said, "Old man, what do you know about pitching?" And I said, "Well, I know a little bit more than you do." And he turned out to be a pretty good pitcher there and a good friend of mine. I made a lot of good close contacts and everything. I love it. They got a good coach over there now who's really done a heck of a job and turned that program completely around.
I know they love having you there as well. You mentioned Charlie Blackman. What a player. What a hitter. He turned out to be in the major leagues. What do you remember about him being at Young Harris?
That he was a left-handed pitcher that couldn't get anybody out and didn't hit a whole lot and played first base, and then went to independent ball in Texas somewhere, and somebody helped him, and he went back to Georgia Tech and had a heck of a year and got drafted, and the rest is history. He was a good player for many years with the Colorado Rockies. Still stay in touch with him. Love Charlie Blackman.
You know, the thing about him, not a lot of players stay with one organization for as long as he did anymore. Seeing that, you know, it says something about his loyalty. And again, what a player he turned out to be. Georgia Tech alum, Young Harris alum.
Yeah.
What a player he turned out to be. I
Yeah.
want to mention another young player that you had with the Braves, Dale Murphy. What was your first impression of the future 2-time MVP?
Well, I first saw Murphy in spring training. We had a strike that year. So Eddie Robinson said, we'll have a rookie camp. He brought all the young guys down there. So he was a catcher. What I remember most, we were playing the Yankees. He's catching. Guy stole second. Ball went to left field. Next pitch, stole third. Hit the left field fence. And Chris Canizera was my catching instructor. He said, "Oh, if you'll take him out, I can fix that." I said, "I'll take him out, but I don't think you can fix that." The next morning, we're playing. Richmond was playing at another one of the club, AAA club. Murphy's catching. He threw a ball to center field on a steal. The center fielder called for a fair catch. But you know what? They moved him to first base, and I was with the Giants then. And I'd tell the guy on second base, if the ground ball is hit and they're throwing it to Murphy, you keep running toward touch third and go home, because his throw, he might throw it away. But then they moved him to outfield, and his arm got so good you couldn't run on him anymore. But at all that time, he was a prince of a guy. I would say he was had the most character. he and Willie McCovey of any two players I ever managed. Dale Murphy, they don't make him any better than him.
You know, a lot has been said over the years about his Hall of Fame candidacy. You know, to me, it's a shame that he hasn't made it in yet. If you had the vote, does Dale Murphy get the vote?
You bet. I was pulling like mad when he wound up playing in Colorado. They would get 500 home runs. He didn't. But I think he was a Hall of Famer. 2 times he's an MVP, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm. Consecutive.
Yeah. On that club, yeah, he'd get my vote.
You know, the Hall of Fame, really, over the years, there's a lot of those. There's a lot of guys that me and you can look at on a sheet of paper and circle and say they should be in the Hall of Fame. Dale Murphy's one. I would say, you know, Don Mattingly's another. You know, the Reds have a few. Vada Pinson, I think you could argue, should be in the Hall of Fame. There's so many. Do you think the Hall of Fame should change the way they handle the voting?
Well, that's not for me to say, but hey, the first 2 guys you mentioned, Mattingly and, yeah, it's a shame he got hurt with that back injury. Because, hey, he's a good-looking player and a good hitter, and he played every day, hurt or anyway. I've read books about him and got his book on hitting. He is so good. Don Mattingly, yeah, I'd vote for him in the Hall of Fame. And just like I would Murphy.
Well, and again, there's so many. You know, the Hall of Fame is the Hall of Fame for a reason. It's hard to get in. But I hope genuinely one day that Dale Murphy does. I want to mention a few other people from your time with Atlanta and just get your thoughts. There was a relief pitcher that I got to know who has unfortunately passed away, Adrian Devine. I know his family well. I know you knew him. If you could just speak on who he was and the type of person he was, but also the type of pitcher he was.
Well, he got better after I left. But, you know, we tried to start him, but then he turned into a relief pitcher. I think I met him the same day at Darrell Cheney's tournament I met you. Mm-hmm. Adrian was a good person. Yeah, take the ball any time. I liked him. And, you know, Johnny Same was the pitching coach then, and he worked like mad with all those guys, try to make them better. Adrian Devine, yeah. Passed away much too early.
Agreed.
For game day, work day, or any day, Glenn Smith in Opelika is loaded with GMC Sierra and Canyon trucks. Choose from a huge selection of the best-selling full-size GMC Sierras, discounted up to $13,750 off. Test drive the new mid-size GMC Canyons with a comfortable ride and strong towing, discounted up to $4,000 off. Plus, enjoy no payments until December. Glenn Smith GMC in Opelika. Get ready to drive and get ready to smile.
Leo Mazzoni, you mentioned Johnny Sane. Leo Mazzoni's a good friend of mine. He credits Johnny Sane in a lot of ways for making Leo what he became and training him in the ways that Johnny Sane knew. What were your impressions of Johnny Sane over the years?
I loved him. He was good to me. And, you know, he believed in having that ball in your hand every day. And not throwing hard, but just to keep the feel of it and everything. And strikes. And his record speaks for itself in the big leagues. And what a good guy he was. I love Johnny Sane. And I can see why Mazzoni liked him. Because Sane helped him. Yeah. And so did Glavine, Smoltz,
and Maddox.
Yeah, that kind of helped too.
That'll make your record a little better over the years for sure.
Sure will.
You know, you managed at Fulton County Stadium for the Braves. What are just some of the memories of being in that ballpark? Of course, it's not here anymore. But being at that ballpark and, you know, Chief Nakahoma's TP in left field sticks out in a lot of fans' minds. But just what do you remember about the launching pad?
Well, the last years we played there, Chico Ruiz was a utility infielder. and Nakahoma would run out of their dugout going toward the TP.
You take a look at Nakahoma. He's praying for a win.
Chief is not in mid-season form. He must have had a short night. Now he's getting it going. There we go. And the Braves take the field as the Chief makes his way toward his teepee.
Chico had a lasso, and he roped him at deep shortstop and tied him up. Everybody got a big kick out of that. I remember seeing Nakahoma. The last time I saw he and Necro, they were together on number 9 at the golf course up there in Helen. That's the last time I've seen them.
I'll tell you, one of my best memories is sitting with them on that green on hole number 9. I sat with them all day and listened to old stories, and there's just nothing that replaces that.
I know it.
Chief had a lot of good stories. He was a good friend of mine, and the impact on the culture of Atlanta Braves really speaks for itself. When you look at the entirety of your career and you pick out certain moments, I want to ask you about this. Pete Rose becomes the hit king in the 80s. Where were you? Did you watch it live? Do you remember what you were thinking?
Well, first of all, in 1968, on a Friday night before the season's over on Sunday, Pete was fighting for the first batting title. He looked terrible on Friday night. We're playing the Giants. I told him, hey, we got a day game tomorrow on Saturday. I said, you be out here and we'll hit extra. So he did, and the next day we're facing Gaylord Perry. And he hated to hit off Gaylord Perry. He goes up and goes 4 for 4, slides into second base, and Howell an intercept. Boy, that's really something. Pete said, yeah, 4. He said, no, we've got the radio on in the dugout, and Matty Alou is 3 for 3 in Chicago. So Pete goes up and gets the 5th hit, not off Gaylord or somebody else. He's 5 for 5. The next day, Ray Sadekis pitching, he had a double. I took him out, and he won his first batting title. The next year, we're in Atlanta at the end of the season. Some guy sitting on the on-deck circle, fans, said, Pete, you need a hit. Clemente is 4 for 4 in Montreal. And he said, you get a hit, you win the title. And he went out and laid down a perfect bunt that Cleveland couldn't make a play on, and he won his batting title. There's 2 batting titles he won like that. I'll never forget that. And I don't know where I was. I saw it on TV when he got that hit to Brett Cobb, and Tommy Helms was hugging him at first base. I don't know where I was then, but I remember I was watching it on TV. So
you got to think it's pretty crazy that kid you met in, I want to say 66, would later go on to get 4,000 hits and become the all-time hit king. Does that give you any kind of pause? The fact that you managed the guy that has not just that record, many records in baseball, but specifically he's the hit king. Does that give you any kind of pause that guy that you helped in the early years of his career would later become what he became?
Well, in making that year, Tommy Helms hit 340, Pete hit 330, and Tommy never let him get over that.
That's pretty
And
funny.
then one night in that same year in 62, we're playing in Greenville, South Carolina, Dodger Farm Club. Pete was 0 for 2 the first inning. He went 5 for 7 the rest of the game. He loved base hit better than anybody I ever seen, and could get them too. I'll tell you another story about Pete Rose is lucky. We traveled in station wagons. We left Portsmouth, Virginia, going to Savannah, Georgia. We were traveling in station wagons. He and Helms rode in the back, looking backwards. So I later found out he crawled up out the back window and crawled up on the luggage rack and looked like, gave a finger to the driver. Hey, if they'd have wrecked or anything, you'd never have been here interviewing me. The Reds would have fired me in a New York minute. Something would have happened to him.
I mean, I'm sure there's a million Pete Rose stories, and we all know the records. We all know, the moments that he created on the field. But who was he off the field? Who was he as a person?
He always styling, wearing good clothes and everything. Hey, we used to have breakfast every morning at the Jack Tar Hotel in San Francisco. He'd say, "You going to buy us breakfast in the morning, Helms and I?" And I said, "Yeah." And then we'd go to the ballpark. Hey, he was good. I got nothing but admiration for Pete Rose.
While we're on that topic, Major League Baseball did reinstate him. They made him eligible for reinstatement this past year after he passed, along with Shoeless Joe Jackson. How do you feel about that, and what were your thoughts on that?
I don't think he'll get in. I really don't. As much as he should be, but I don't think he will. Because a lot of the writers who remember, they're dead too, that covered him and all those times. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's just my thought. I don't know about the new writers, what their thoughts is.
Well, I can tell you,
it'll be tough. It'll be tough.
I can tell you if I ever get a vote, he's got it.
Yeah.
I can tell you that. If anybody in the younger generation will give him a vote, it'll be me. But, while we're talking about Cincinnati again, Johnny Bench, again, one of the all-time greatest catchers, you had him at a really young age. There's a quote that stuck with me. I saw it this past week, and he said that, Dave Bristol gave me confidence when I was a kid catching men. What were your thoughts on 19-year-old Johnny Bench? What kind of potential did you think he had?
Well, all you had to do is see him. He and Smokey Burgess, both. Smokey was a left-hand hitter. At a young age, Johnny Bench, hitting right-handed, could hit a ball down the left field line and keep it fired better than anybody I ever saw. They kept a record of Gene Freese. He hit 23 foul balls, just a foot foul, who'd hook it. Bench could keep those hands inside the ball, just like Burgess could left-handed, and keep it fired down the right field line. And that was at a young age he could do that. I saw him one day, there was an overthrow at first base, and Woody Woodward was coming second, and the runner tried to go to second. He threw the ball, and Woody was going to catch it here. It hit him right up here. The ball just took off. What an arm, man. Man, oh, man. Great guy on the club, yeah. And, when he got the Rookie of the Year, he invited me to go to, in that fall, they had a day for him in Bangor, Oklahoma. And that's where that expression came. Bangor, Oklahoma is 3 miles from resumed speed. That's how small that town is. I love Bench. He's a good guy. Still stay in touch with him.
You mentioned this player earlier, but I'd be remiss if we didn't talk about him. We lost him a couple of years ago. Hall of Famer Willie McCovey. You coached him in his final seasons. You mentioned the kind of person he was. I'd like you to elaborate on that and just.
Well, the owner and the general manager said it's time for him to retire. And they didn't want to tell him. I said, well, I'll tell him. So I told him, and he said, Dave, we're going on a 3-day trip to San Diego. He'd been traded earlier there. He said, can I make that trip? And I said, sure. So we came back from that 3-day road trip, and we're playing the Reds. And I pinch hit him in the 8th inning, and he drove in the winning run. and I sent Rich Murray in pinch run for him, and he got a standing ovation. He was so good. My younger kid was a bat boy, and he said, Lance, you'll never be without a pair of baseball shoes, either white, black, or orange. And Lance was only 9 or 10 years old. He always kept him in Puna baseball shoes. He loved it. And I was coaching third base in Atlanta when he hit his 500th home run. I've got a picture of shaking hands with him. McCovey, he's a class act, buddy. And could play, too. Wow.
Hey guys, if you're into baseball cards, football cards, wrestling cards, doesn't matter, come check out my friends here in Columbus, Georgia at Columbus Sports Card. Their address, 5880 Veterans Parkway, Suite D. And of course, you can buy, sell, and trade. Again, my friends at Columbus Sports Cards, link below.
Managed against him. He had a home run off Milt Pampas one day in old Candlestick Park, and I told the writers that ball was on that aircraft carrier out there in the bay. Pampas got mad about it, but he hit it so far. And then now they got McCovey Cove named after him, which is very apropos.
You managed so many good players, but you managed against so many great players too. You mentioned you managed against Willie McCovey. You just told that story. What are some of those players, that you managed against that you just were amazed by? I know you mentioned Roberto Clemente earlier. He's one of those that is a unique 3,000 hit guy. But what are some of those guys that just stand out to you that you managed against?
Marichal of the Giants, tough boy. You didn't want to go in there and face he and Gaylord. Man, oh man, they had a good pitching staff. Larry Durker was a good pitcher. Houston had good pitching. That was a tough league. The Dodgers always had good pitching. Because the first year I managed was 66 after Koufax last year. Woo-wee. You don't want to go in there and face he and Osteen and Drysdale. Hey, you better have a long-term contract.
Dave, I said this earlier. I'll repeat it. One thing I've always appreciated about you is you love baseball, whether it's your era or whether it's today's game. You love baseball. What makes you love baseball?
That's a good question. I don't know, there's just something about it. It gets in your blood, and it's always been there. Played on the town teams when I was plowing corn one day, and I was 14 years old, and they came get me, said we're going to Hendersonville to play Berkeley Mills. So I went and played shortstop. But the biggest break I ever had was getting to go to Baylor School in Chattanooga my senior year, and I was working out with the Chattanooga Lookouts. A Cincinnati scout, Paul Florence, came through town and said, Bristol is working out with the Lookouts, probably will sign with the Washington Senators. Paul Florence read that, and he called my mother and said, don't let him sign till I talk to him. So he was on the front porch the next morning. And he said, I'd love to see you play. We got a farm club in Columbia, South Carolina. So we went down there. It rained out 3 days. Then he said, put me on the train to Cincinnati. And I worked out a week up there. And why they signed me, I don't know, because I after seeing Roy McMillan throw and Grady Hatton and Klazuski and those guys. But Joe Adcock, he was on the team too. He said, hey, take all those bats you want. And Virgil Stalcup was a shortstop. He said, take it. Don Hoke later on gave me. But anyway, Washington Club never forgave me. And Paul Florence, Zen Beck was a scout for the Washington Senators, lived in Chattanooga. They never forgave me. But Paul Florence, that's a good scout, and he whisked me out of there. And I'm glad he did, because
Turned out pretty good for you, Dave.
sure did.
You know, you mentioned Ted Klaczynski. That's a name that I think gets overlooked a lot of times. How impressive was he, just as an athlete overall and as a hitter?
But you can imagine an 18-year-old guy being around guys like that. Amazing. And then I later knew him when he was with the Reds. He was a coach in Cincinnati when I was there. Good guy. And turned out to be a good hitting coach on those teams Sparky had, the Big Red Machine. Did a heck of a job. Good guy and a good personality.
When you were growing up, you talked about being 14 years old and getting picked up to go play in a league. What were some of the players at the time that you had your eye on as a young man that maybe inspired you to play?
Well, we could get WCKY Cincinnati on the radio, and I'd listen to the Reds, and then getting to be around Roy McMillan, who later coached for me at Milwaukee. What a fine guy. I've never seen a guy pick up a ground ball better than he could, or with the arm. And then he was playing with the Mets, and he picked up a ground ball at the latter part of his career, and his arm went out, and the ball went in the third base dugout, and he never could throw again. Amazing. And the best arm you've ever seen, like a double-barrel shotgun, boom, stay on. What a good guy.
How apropos for you, to be listening to the Reds on the radio as a young man wanting to play one day, and later you be a manager for the Reds, and later be inducted into the Cincinnati Reds Hall of Fame.
Yeah, no, and Wade Hoyt was an announcer, and when we traveled in the station wagons, I told you earlier in Macon, Wade Hoyt would be, and we'd go from Charlotte to Portsmouth, and he'd never give the score. I finally told him, I said, get your little hourglass and let that sand go down. God, Wade Hoyt, what a wonderful pitcher. He was a great pitcher for those Babe Ruth teams with the Yankees.
Yeah.
But we couldn't get the Red score. We'd be driving like mad, and he'd never hear the score.
You kind of built a reputation over the years for being a fiery manager. I think you had 19 career ejections, if I'm not mistaken. There's a few other managers that stick out for getting ejected, historically speaking. Bobby Cox has the record. Earl Weaver. How important, do you think it was for sticking up for your guys like that?
It's good. When I had the press conference, when Eddie Robinson hired me, Furman Bishop was the sports editor of the Atlanta Journal. He asked me, he said, Dave, Eddie Robinson says he's hired a fiery manager. Do you fit the bill? And I said, yeah, I've been fired 4 times. He didn't know what to say.
That's pretty good. Dave, I've always enjoyed talking to you, and something my viewers don't know. We've spoken quite a bit over the years about baseball, the way it's changed, and
right.
I always enjoy these conversations. I cherish these conversations with you. I appreciate you inviting me into your home and letting me do this. And I look forward to doing it again. I really do. And again, thank you. Always good to see you, Dave.
Hey, I may imagine you driving all the way from Columbus, Georgia. That makes me feel so good. Thank you. Thank you so much.
This video has been presented by Glenn Smith Chevrolet GMC in Opelika. Get ready to smile. Tell me about it. Who is this?
She works at the Chick-fil-A in Blairsville, and she's a good friend of mine. She's working to try to own one day.
Wow.
But she sent me that my birthday, I think.
It's a good gift. That's a good gift.
Yeah, that's a hell of a gift.
Baseball fans, make sure you like and share this video and subscribe to this channel. As always, thank you for your support.